Hi, everybody. I'm very pleased and honored to announce that we have today the possibility to talk with Dzigar Kongtrul Rinpoche. For those who maybe doesn't know him, he is a Tibetan Lama. He's a Buddhist teacher. He currently lives in Americas in Colorado, and he's a Tibetan Buddhist teacher from the Nyingma tradition and the Longchen Nyingtik lineage. And he as well is the founder of the Mangala Sri Buddhi. I don't know if I pronounce correctly. And he teaches the Dharma through worldwide, in Europe, America, South America as well, right? In Brazil. Thank you, Rinpoche, for being here.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, Rinpoche, I would like to start talking about a topic that I think is kind of important for the younger generation, especially. My perception of the world is that sometimes we are losing ourselves in the search of something, in the pursuit of happiness, and because we want to be okay, we want to be happy. And because of that search, because of that pursuit, we lose ourselves in some kind of pathways, like materialistic way, or the spiritualism as well, the consumerism. And I know in a little bit extension what is the Buddhist view of happiness, and I would like to ask you, what's the meaning of happiness for you?
Well, generally speaking, we have two aspects of happiness. Happiness that is more based on outer conditions, like for example, if you're homeless, and then if you find a home, a nice home to live, that's going to be a very big happiness. So as also in that way, how it improves your kind of quality of life and living standard. There's with that some sense of achievement and a sense of relaxation of the previous time and previous times struggle. And then there's also a sense of not just only the achievement and the relaxation, but joy that comes along with it. You know? So there's that kind of happiness. And so that kind of happiness is, you could say, is based on the material gain and material base, and also I think economic and improvement of the economic standard and the livelihood that allows one to sort of do that, and the education that allows oneself to have the better livelihood, to sort of all to improve one's living conditions. Then there's the happiness that is not so externally dependent. It is more to do with what kind of person you are in general. What kind of person you are in general, meaning how you think, and what is your sort of principle, beliefs, and what is your way of thinking. That is much really internal. That is, of course, comes from the education system what we have in the worldwide to sort of improve our knowledge of all of the subjects that we study, and particularly psychology, and how to sort of have a sense of understanding of oneself. And then also, I think a religion, whatever the religion that you have been born with, and whatever the education that you have got from the different faith to the ministries or to your own parents, it all shapes our way of thinking, our way of how we relate with ourselves and ourselves as a person, how we then relate with others. But then there has to be some deeper kind of like, convictions. Convictions, for example, it is important to be a kind person. And why do we should try to be a kind person? It is important to be a compassionate person. But why do we believe it is important to be a compassionate person? So the reason in the Buddhism is much contemplative, and much based on sort of seeing oneself and others as an equal. We all wish to be happy. There's no any differences between ourselves and others, other living beings. We all wish to be free from pain and suffering. And in there's no really difference between oneself and others. We may look very different and we may act a little different. And also, we are in a different places in life, with the background and culture, and so as also with all of the different kind of things that people often think how one is separate from others. And there is, of course, that. But internally, we are identical. Identical in a sense, we all wish to be happy, and we all long to be free from suffering. And in that kind of really inner life, we are all identical. So contemplations on that, and then when you really are convinced that you are identical with any other living beings, then to think, oh, I have this love for myself, or love for my family members, and so as also anyone that I choose, So in that way, you have the capacity of love proved already being there. So then the question is, why don't I expand that? Why don't I expand that to a larger number, larger sort of number of living beings? And when you do want and wish to expand that love towards a larger number of living beings, you have to have reasons, and the reasons would be everyone wishes to be happy. And therefore, why not, instead of focusing on just oneself or a small group of people, why not wish for all living beings to be happy? So that kind of is the base for oneself to generate that potential of the love that one already has to be stronger and grow bigger and cover much more towards all living beings. In there, then first, of course, it's going to be a little bit of difficult to include people whom you have felt some sense of anger and resentment, some you felt that they have wronged you or they have hurt you, immediately it's going to be difficult. But if you work on it, work on it with a sense of forgiveness, and also a sense of trying to understand that even though what has happened, but it's a good time to move on with not shutting one's heart down to them, because that doesn't actually achieve anything. And then also, if one actually is able to forgive and move on, how that adds to your life and strengthens your mind and life altogether and makes you more free. So on a contemplations like that, then finally, you come to a point, yes, these people may have done some wrong to you and hurt you, and you felt hurt, but it's time to move on. And the way to move on is that they have done this through ignorance and through confusions, and we ourselves have a lot of times done things out of ignorance and confusions. But it's natural for people to feel that they would like to be forgiven or not held as in a sort of any kind of contempt in anyone's heart. So why not sort of forgive and then move on? And if there's a means to sort of like repay the relation, yes. But if there's no, but in one's own heart, be free to move on in that way. So this kind of makes the loving kindness practice much more sort of like a practical to day-to-day life. And thoughts and emotions that generally sort of rises in our mind as a destructive things makes us not, even if we have all the conditions of happiness outside, we are not necessarily happy because of something is lacking inside. So this sort of like makes then the happiness complete. You have the outer conditions, and then you have the inner conditions, and then between the two, of course, both are important. Which is going to be the more important one? It's going to be the inner one, because we have come to know that through the many stages of the past, with very little outer conditions, people live very happy inside through this kind of mental strength. So for me, this kind of wisdom of the Buddha Dharma, and then a particular sort of like methods of working with your mind, that is the source of happiness, and that's also happiness. And then, so there are many, this kind of mind training that, we have with the practice of loving kindness, just as we spoke. And then, of course, there's the compassion practice, and then there's, being able to really learn how to be happy on behalf of others with a free kind of like a heart, without any kind of barriers or without any impediments of envy or jealousy, because the envy or jealousy is not something anyone really enjoys or wants to have, but they're there, So there is kind of a real slow and gradual training of how to overcome those. And then with a free heart, if you could actually be happy on behalf of others, any other living beings, achievement, then it really adds a lot to your own happiness, your own life, and your own kind of a sense of quality of life being kind of much more improved. So that, and then, one of the most important kind of teachings of the Buddha of the past times that has helped the past time people and the human beings in the human society. But now what we need the most in this time of all the Buddha's teachings, one and the most kind of essential what we need is the kind of sense of contentment. How to sort of be content, how one can practice contentment, and also in order to have a kind of contentment in one's heart and feel the heart feeling full, you have to also work with your desire for more.
Yeah.
if you don't work with a desire or craving for more, then it naturally translates into sense of discontent. But if you work with the desire for more and craving for more being kind of limited in your mind, thinking that what I have is enough and what I have is good amount and what I have is really a blessing, and it's something that I first must enjoy what I have before I sort of crave more. I crave more in a kind of compulsive way, you know, and then really try to feel that contentment in the heart, like you know, when you feel very kind of touched, and when you are very much happy with something that positively has happened to yourself, with the tears coming out of your eyes, not like being sad, but being happy. That's kind of the impediment of the contentment, you know. So when you feel like that in life, just in general, you know, with your kind of like a life, and then things you have done and things you have gained, and particularly with your relations with the others, and how you are able to see through the relations with the others, you know, and then in that way how it has defined you as a better human being. You are able to give your potential pathway to establish yourself as a good human being, and then feeling a really good sense of a contentment in there. That's really, I think, very, very helpful in this day and age, because we are living in a capitalist world, and there's so much kind of like a selfish, you know, showering on us as we need this and we need that, and you know, you're not complete without this or without that. So, you know, naturally, I think to have some kind of a practice of better needs and contentment practice, it's a very, very helpful Buddhist. And that is the kind of the ground of the other happinesses, you know, this fundamental better needs and much contentment as a ground happiness for other happinesses to be built with a mental state.
Yeah, thank you, Rinpoche. And it comes to my mind that I don't know, in other generations, but I have a sense that in our generation, like maybe they are called the millennials, and we have that sense that if we have more, we have a stronger sense of self-confidence. The more we have, the more professional titles we have, the more confident we are with ourselves. And this is non-stop, and you continue and non-stop. And I think that what you said, maybe not to ask why I'm like that. It's time to move on. It's time to see that other people wants to be happy as the same as me. But I find that quite difficult, at least in the world I perceive, to renounce to yourself in some way in order to give others. How can we start to do that if we don't have any training at all in the mind?
Yes, I think, you know, we have to understand that all of this, you know, just as in the Buddhist teachings, it states, has to be for specific people with the specific motivations and specific interests that they have, you know. And with that kind of an interest, and with that kind of specific motivations, and with that kind of specific kind of people who would appreciate the mind training, or the value of the mind training, are going to be generally a spiritual person. You know? not so necessarily, of course, they maybe are successful and they have a lot of accomplishments, and they have accomplished a lot through their sort of exertion and through their discipline and through their drive to sort of achieve. But they wouldn't be like just completely senseless and completely caught up and completely driven by the greed. You know? Mm-hmm. So there is going to be sort of area for this kind of people who would generally appreciate the mind training and the discipline of the mind training and the value of the mind training. And they're going to be a little bit of the minority in the general world we live in. And also it's going to be a little bit like, someone who's more self-reflective and kind of a little bit more internally interested to sort of know about their own self and their own mind, more introverted rather than completely extroverted, So millennium, just in general, we would have various types of people in all ages and all time in that way. But in the millennium, as you are born in the millennium, I think more in this way, I feel more, for example, environmentally, they are much more, self-reflective. And also in the values of capitalism, though of course we are all going to be part of the capitalist economy, there's a more sort of self-reflection on that as well. And also politically, also they are much more self-reflective, even though, one is kind of caught up in some sense, but then in the other hand, millenniums, I do feel, have a little bit more of an advantage of being, in a way, little bit more self-reflective, and the advantage of being self-reflective. So millenniums could really change the world in the future. For example, I hear many kind of businesses are going out of business because the millenniums are not interested in purchasing those, so they are going out of business. And going out of business for the company who holds the shares is not good. But generally, if it's a kind of an extravagance, and if it is in a much more sort of wasteful and harmful to the environment, for example, paper napkins, millennials don't buy so much of a paper napkins, I heard. I think that's very, very, I found that to be very interesting and very good. So, so what I'm trying to get to is that, our sort of intention and our reach out to others whom we think could have some positive benefit for what we believe and what we also not only believe, but try to sort of abide by the wisdom and the skillful means, has to be somewhat, selective in that way. It cannot be just trying to think of changing the whole world at once. It has to be, selective in a sense, like people who are really interested in this way. And I think are really a good audience in that way. And then mostly people are very educated this day and age. They have finished a lot of schooling. So there's a natural capacity to contemplate and, use their kind of a innate prajna, wisdom to know better, know things in deeper ways. So in that way, I think, the Buddhist wisdom, or the wisdom of love and the wisdom of compassion, or wisdom of, self-discipline, or wisdom of, tolerance, and any of the kind of common values for all religions and all spiritual people, if there isn't a medium to reach out and way to explain in a sensible way, I think those people would be greatly benefited and greatly appreciated as well.
Thank you, Rinpoche. And yeah, I think that in some way, the way to start changing our minds is do it. It's like, if you want to be kind, just start doing it. And start thinking about others and be compassionate. And you were talking about the spiritual path, and I had the opportunity to read about a phrase you mentioned about what's the meaning of being spiritual. And what you said is, the spiritual, for what I read, spiritual means to be flexible, courageous, and exploratory in the face of life's joy and paradoxes, while never losing touch with the connection to its deepest meaning. What's the meaning of being spiritual in these days?
Well, I think I generally think 3 layers of being a spiritual, for someone who's really busy and who has many, for example, responsibilities, like responsibility of raising children, not just one, maybe quite a few, by natural disposition, and also the karma, and also one's own kind of interest to have a bigger family. If mother or father who has 3 or 4 children, which in a lot of countries, like in the South America, a lot of people have, big family in that way, they're not going to have that much of a time, just raising their children and then trying to, have the livelihood in place to also, raise the children in a very sort of nice way, and also work, and then also hold the family together, and then also have some kind of a standing in the society and the relation with the society. So there's going to be naturally not so much of an, I would think, great deal of time, But yet at the same time, I think, most probably there is going to be in those type of people a sense of, wanting to be a person with a faith, faith in the Christianity, and the faith in the Buddhist teachings, and also faith in any other religion. They want to have faith in, any of the major religions, including Buddhism as a sort of religion and faith in that religion. But what does that exactly mean? Individually, is they want to kind of have some sense of moral self-discipline. What is a moral self-discipline is going to be is, they want to be a kind person. They want to be a compassionate person, as much as they could actually be kind in given time. They want to be compassionate as much as, they could be in given time, And then they want to have some sense of like, path of how to be generous with, their own families, towards their own community, towards their own, particularly extended, family, like a parents or, grandparents, or, your in-laws and your grand-in-laws and things like that. I think, so that is going to be, and then they will do some, prayers, they'll do some prayers, and they have some faith that the prayers really do serve them and keep them in touch with their own good heart. So that is kind of the fundamental level of the spiritualism. Not all caught up in the capitalism. As much as they are caught up, they are also in the other side, not caught up completely. Then I think there's going to be someone more spiritual, in a sense. They have got already a lot of education in their life, so they're curious. They have a lot of questions in their mind about life and death and afterlife. After death, what's there? Right? And then also, what is here in our life, what we can achieve. Of course, there's all these things that society emphasizes, what we should achieve and what we must achieve, but then in some sense of hollowness with all of this, some sense of kind of an empty feeling with all of this, and maybe not adding it all up to being like that great of a meaningful. So then there's the meaning. What is the search? There's going to be the kind of search of the meaning. What is the meaning of life? Yes, of course, it's to be a good person and good, father and good mother and, good brother, good sister, good son or daughter, and good friend. Yes. But deeper sort of like a really, even going beyond the being kind and compassionate person, what is the deeper meaning, of life? So there's a curiosity, and they may have some faith. They may have, not yet completely have chosen their own faith, because their faith is more oriented with the support of the intellect, and the knowledge and understanding that it's required there to feel quite comfortable and quite subtle in that, way in their own being. So then they search, they search in different ways to find that meaning, and different ways they search to kind of understand what they are searching in the first place. And then also sometimes then, they choose different religions, and then they, study them with a curiosity, and then a growing faith and a growing kind of a sense of conviction in that philosophy, and then being also very open to all religion and all faith, and being kind of very flexible in a way to adapt anything from any point of view that can offer you a clarity that sort of satisfies you. So there's that kind of, spiritual people, spiritual people, which I find it to be one step above the average spiritual people, right? Then there's the spiritual people who has real deep kind of like a interest to pursue the spiritual path of one tradition, or one tradition that you follow, but then also, you could appreciate all other tradition. Like, for example, you take a refuge in the Buddhism, if it is a Buddhist, and then you also, you also are to take the Bodhisattva vow, and then you really train yourself in the Bodhisattva path, and then you really know the Bodhicitta practice in deep ways in this life, as well as also, you want to carry on that Bodhicitta practice in the next life, because you know that, Bodhicitta is the only going to be one that really is the kind of one medicine for all illnesses, and all the illnesses, various types of illnesses, wherever, whatever we have, or however it comes up from, ignorant and self-centeredness. And bodhicitta is the kind of the view of the, the absolute bodhicitta, the emptiness and the selflessness as a sort of, antidote for the ignorant. And then also the self-centeredness, instead of the self being more important, love for the self being more important, you try to kind of slowly, exchange that, the love of others, and then you work on that, and then you gain a lot of deeper insights and deeper experience and deeper confidence and deeper, deeper sort of transformations that allows you to sort of look at your own life and your own life's meaning differently, as well as also the world and how the world is kind of made of, and so you don't have the kind of same, yes, you could live in the world like others, and you could relate with the others, but you don't see the world in the way the other sees. You see it with the eye of Dharma. So there's that kind of a real, more kind of a, like it could be in a Christianity, like with the, many of the saints of the Christianity, like for example, Saint Francis as a saint, how he kind of like chose, and in Milarepa, and then so many others, that's the kind of the ultimate spiritual path.
Okay, thank you, Rinpoche. And just to start finishing this talk, in currently there are many young people that are leaving the system, like leaving jobs or leaving educational system, because in the past maybe we have been living because we have to do it, but now we have a little bit more sense of freedom, and we choose things, and we're choosing more and more not to continue what we have to do. And in that pathway, we find ourselves like kind of lost and without any answer, without anything to cling or to feel any space where we can feel, okay, I'm safe. And I think this brings a lot of confusion, a lot of depression as well, and because we feel lost. What would be your recommendation, just to finalize this talk, to the younger generation or people that has this kind of feeling?
Well, everyone has got quite an amount of education in their life. Those who are faced with this kind of a challenge, as you are describing. So that education has been for two reasons. One, to improve the capacity of their mind to be able to be curious, and to know things through reasoning, and to have a certitude with one's own experience, not just through hearsay, So that's one of the most important aspects of modern education. Another aspect of education has been how, as you are educated through and through, and you could become more productive for yourself and for your family. How you could find a job, how you could work in such position, and then how you could be productive and contribute to your own company or company of whoever you're working for, and then meanwhile to earn the salary, and to have a livelihood, and then to be able to support your family, Now, in some profession, there's also, you know, much altruism involved, like in the profession of doctors and nurses and social workers and so on and so forth, you know. But main kind of a motivation from the childhood onwards is, you know, how you could establish yourself in the world. You know? So, though, however, I think, you know, there is this kind of like a challenge. I don't know whether I want to do this, or I don't know whether I feel this is the right thing for me. I don't know whether this is really, you know, meaningful enough for me. Oh, this is really too much of a challenging, too much of a headache, and too much of a consuming of my life. So therefore, you know, I don't know whether I really want to kind of do something like this, to carry on my life in this way. You know, yes, it may actually help me to support myself and support my family. Or maybe then, therefore, you know, I might not want to have a family, and I might not want to, you know, support my family by working so hard as, you know, my parents did. You know, I might live alone, or I might actually live alone because of the convenience. Just kind of like thoughts and the feelings and the emotions, you know, that comes up. It's a very actually natural, you know. I think it's very natural, and I think it's wonderful because there's a more sort of like a self-reflectiveness, more intelligence being kind of solicited out of one's own mind to really know things, you know. So, you know, I think what I would suggest is, you know, however, up to this point, your life has been that way, you know, and you should see why it has been that way and what is the positive, you know, outcome of this. The positive outcome of this is that you're naturally, you know, much more intelligent, much more able to think and know through reasons and have a certitude through your own experience. And you are much more able to not just only read and write, but get into a deeper subjects. You know, so this came from, you know, your education. So you should really appreciate your education, even though you were training, you know, in becoming a mechanic of some sort, you know, still you have that education. So one must appreciate that. Then in the other hand, now when it comes to a profession and whether you want to actually pursue that profession and profession is suitable to you or not, or meaningful to you or not, or how much it consumes your life, or how much you don't want it to consume your life, you know, you should appreciate at least the capacity of that, you know, capacity that you have already have in your hand. This is a capacity. Without that capacity in your life, you are much more supported by this capacity. So one must appreciate that. Then making the choice, before you make another choice, you know, another choice, you should at least, you know, think of another choice very carefully and through with the reasoning, you know, and then slowly make a transition from what you're doing now to that. So there's no really a gap, and there's no really a sort of certain kind of, you know, jump where actually you fall, not making a transition and not, you know, being able to move from one place to another place fully, and then you fall and you break your back. So that would be my advice.
Beautiful. Well, Rinpoche, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, for giving us time. And I hope these teachings can be spread through the YouTube, Facebook, everywhere, and reach some hearts and souls for self-reflection.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate your capacity to reach out to others and your intention to reach out to others, and then you are also, you know, with a deep interest to solicit many great teachers, and of course I'm not one of them, but I also take this as an honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Bye. Bye to everyone.